on the book of Joshua. And it's talking about new beginnings, how the nation of Israel had a lot of new beginnings as they moved into the promised land. And today we're going to catch up to the place where they have entered the promised land and what they have to deal with as soon as they get there. So if you have a Bible, turn to Joshua chapter 6. If you don't have a Bible, there should be one of the chairs in front of you. It's page 154. You can find it on your phone or tablet, or if you brought your own Bible, Joshua is kind of toward the beginning of the Bible, after the books of Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then Joshua. Joshua 6, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of background, make sure you're on the same page. The nation of Israel, they were captive in Egypt for 400 years. God sent the plagues on Egypt. They finally let the Israelites go. They crossed the Red Sea. They got to the promised land, and they doubted God. They doubted that he could help them get into the promised land. And so they went in the desert for 40 years. And all the adults that made that decision, they died in the desert over that 40-year period. Now a new generation has come up. They've come back. They've just crossed into the promised land. And the city of Jericho is right there. And God had a special plan for how they were going to defeat Jericho. Very simply, God said, here's what you're going to do. Take the fighting men, and they're supposed to be part of the army here, and then the priests will bring the Ark of the Covenant, and they'll be blowing their trumpets, and behind them will be some more of the army. Now, on the first day of the attack, what I want you to do is grab the army, and I want you to go walk around the city of Jericho during the day. Okay? Just do that once, and then go back to your camp. At the next day, I want you to get up. I want you to walk around the city of Jericho, have the priests continue to blow the trumpets. No one make a sound other than those trumpets. You just walk around that city again on the second day. Go ahead and do that on the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the 6 days. Now, on the seventh day, I'm going to shake things up. Okay, on the seventh day, we're going to do things a little different. When you get up and walk around the city, I don't want you just to do it once. I want you to do it 7 times. And after those 7 times, then blow the trumpets, you shout, and the walls are going to come crumbling down. And all the military strategists said, you're nuts. That is no way to fight a battle. You know, if you want the walls to come down, you got to dig tunnels underneath and disrupt the walls that way. That's how you tear the walls down, because Jericho was a fortress of a city. It was one of the biggest in that area. And so when God says, I just want you to walk around it a whole bunch and then shout, people had to have been thinking he was nuts. But God works in strange ways. And what we're going to learn is some thoughts about this whole idea. And we're going to deal, first of all, with just the fact that followers of God fight. Followers of God fight. There in Joshua chapter 6, I'll read verse 1 and 2. Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. You see, when the nation of Israel crossed the Jordan River and they were going into the promised land, they waged a war in that land. And they started with this fortress city of Jericho. And people right off the bat, they start to have some issues. And they're thinking, well, I thought God was loving, and I thought that God was good. Why would he promote something like this? Why would he do this? Well, God is loving, and God is a good God. And God is also just. And God gives out justice. And to tell you what, we like justice. When we see the battle between good and evil, we like to see justice served. I was watching the Return of the King, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The last part of that was on TV yesterday. And so I'm watching this, and at the end of this huge fight between good and evil, at the end, good wins. And the tower with the all-seeing eye, it's collapsing, and all the evil forces are being destroyed. And it's like, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. And you know, you just get excited because good is winning. Well, in this world that we live in, there is good and there is evil. When God created the world, he did a good job. And we know that God thinks that he did a good job because he said so. If you look at Genesis in the creation account, God creates something, and at the end of the day, he looks at his work and he goes, that's good. And every day, God says that about the creation. God looks and says, it is good. But since the beginning of time, there has been a battle between God and Satan. You see, God has a plan for this world, and Satan is doing everything he can to stop that plan. And so God fights against evil and expects us to do the same. Now, a lot of this battle happens on this planet. You remember the 10 plagues in Egypt. The Israelites were captive in there. God sent the 10 plagues, and the Egyptians finally said, man, we're done. We can't fight against God. Let the Israelites go. Well, those 10 plagues, they were a direct confrontation with the gods that the Egyptians worshipped. It's not like God just woke up one day and said, well, what should I do today? I don't know, lightning, boom, That's not it. God saw the gods that the Egyptians were worshiping and said, man, I'm going to show them who's more powerful. If they want to worship the sun, I'll make it dark. And so all of those Egyptian gods, God was specifically attacking them. And remember this, in the Old Testament, the nation of Israel is called the children of God. Now, Satan was trying to destroy them. So I've got a question for you. What would you do if someone was trying to destroy your kids? Yeah, I know what we would do. We would do whatever it took to keep that from happening. Well, there are people that are choosing to fight for Satan against God. God gave the people in the land where the Israelites were going, God gave them 400 years to repent. And God finally said, I've had enough. When you read about the immorality of the people of Jericho and that whole country, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. I mean, it was just a depraved lifestyle. One of the gods that they worshipped in that country was called Molech. Molech, what they would do is they would make a metal sculpture of Molech, and he would be there with his hands out like this. And this metal sculpture would be hollow, and so they would build up a fire inside of this metal sculpture. And when it got really nice and hot, they would sacrifice babies on that altar. It's that type of depravity that God said, I've had enough. This is evil, and it's got to stop. People continue to commit evil today. Followers of God are supposed to fight against evil. And at times, unfortunately, that means war. Well, the problem is, how do we know when times of war are times of righteous and times when they're not righteous? Well, theologians have had that debate for hundreds, thousands of years. But there's some principles in Romans 13 that gives us some clues. Romans 13:1 says this, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Verse 4, those authorities, they are God's servant to do you good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. See, God has set up authorities, and part of their responsibility is to wage war. Now, as you go through history, the Bible scholars have gotten together and said, okay, through these principles and other principles in the Bible, how do we know what war is good and what war is just? Well, there are some criteria for that. Number one, it has to be a proper authority. It must be the government of that country that declares that war. If you get mad about something that's happening up in Canada, and you decide you're going to drive up there and you're going to start fighting against the Canadians, and you're doing it in the name of the United States of America, well, good luck with that. Because the United States hasn't declared war on Canada, so you're just going to be up there by yourself. You have no right, you have no authority to declare war on that country. Okay? You're not the proper authority. Number two, a just war has to have the right intention. The goal must to bring an end to the conflict so that there is peace. And number three, there must be a just cause for starting the war. There must be a good reason to do it. What are some reasons for a just cause? Number one is self-defense. If another country comes and attacks us, we have the right to defend ourselves. Number two is in the defense of another country. If we see that another country is being attacked and overwhelmed, we have a right to go and help them. When Kuwait was attacked in the first Gulf War, Iraq just starts going in there, and we say, wait, something is wrong here. So we and a bunch of other countries got together and kicked Iraq out of Kuwait. Another reason for a just cause is punishment for evil. When the authorities of a government start killing their own people, someone should step up and defend them in some way. So those are some of the just causes. Unjust causes for war. To gain more territory, just to try and grab more land for yourselves. To take from other people, to convert people to your religion, for the glory of your country. Say, hey, look how good we are. Okay? As you go through history, what you're going to see is that there are some just causes for war. Now, some countries have made decisions that were right and just, and some places have made decisions that were not. But as we get into this place where Jericho is going in, God is saying, hey, here's what's going on, and God is using the nation of Israel to punish the people there because they are so depraved. Followers of God at times will fight. Now, for us today, we're in a different type of a war. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. And for us, followers of God will fight physically. Followers of God will fight physically. For the nation of Israel back here, Joshua 6, verse 5, when you hear them, sound a long blast on the trumpet, have all the people give a loud shout, the wall of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, every man straight in, and that's where the battle begins. And that was a part of it, is they were armed for battle. As they circle around there, they blew the trumpets, they yelled, they went in, and they fought. God uses people to bring justice. That's what he's done. Now, again, we like justice when it's directed at other people. We don't like justice as much when it comes to us. When I'm doing 60 down Hayden, I don't like it when the cop pulls me over. I think there's a good reason he should pull other people over, right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. Why did you pick on me? But there are people whose job is to bring justice. The police officers, when you break the law, they're there to get you in trouble for that. God used the Jewish people to bring justice against the Canaanites. That was a part of their role at this time in history. Later on, the nation of Israel started to turn against God. They started turning their back on him. They started to do stuff that other people got in trouble for. And so God used the Assyrians and the Babylonians to come and bring justice against the nation of Israel. Because God uses people to bring about justice. Today, I believe there's a cultural war in the United States of America. I think it's an internal war that's being fought. And that culture war is really, there are just overwhelming forces that are attacking Christianity. And there are so many places where Christians are not being the aggressors. Christians are just doing their thing, and they're being attacked in our country today. A lot of the major issues deal with freedom of religion. There's a continual barrage against God and his values. In our country today, it happens in a few different ways. Number one, it happens politicians, they pass laws. The court system interprets those laws. I believe the culture war is being fought in the media, on TV, on the internet, through movies. That war is being fought. And followers of God, we need to stand up and fight that. We need to fight it in physical ways, just like the Apostle Paul did. The Apostle Paul was going out and preaching the gospel. And when he was doing that, there were times that he fought through physical means. He was on trial. And as the trial was going on, Paul was realizing, man, I am not going to get a fair trial out of this. And so in the middle of it, he said, hey, wait, time out. I appeal to Caesar. A Roman citizen had the right to, if he felt like the trial wasn't fair, he had the right to go up the ladder and appeal to Caesar. And so Paul said, hey, that's what I'm going to do. There was another time that Paul was arrested. He had created a riot because he was teaching about Jesus, and the people didn't like to hear it. And so the Roman soldiers took Paul, and they took him into a room, and they're trying to figure out why this guy was starting this riot. So they stretched him out, and they're getting ready to flog him. And as they're getting ready, Paul says, time out. Is it legal for you to beat a Roman citizen who has not had a trial? And it wasn't. Because if you beat a Roman citizen without a trial, if whoever was doing the beating, they were going to get the same punishment. So someone went and got their boss. Their boss came in, and Paul said, hey, is it right for you to beat a Roman citizen without a trial? And their commander said, well, you know what? I paid a lot of money to get my citizenship in Rome. And Paul said, I was born a Roman citizen. And as soon as he said that, all those guys that were getting ready to beat him, poof, they just disappeared. They took off because they realized they had the potential to be in trouble. And so there are times that Paul used physical means to fight the battle for Christ. And we can do the same thing today. There are organizations that are designed just for that. Here in this country, we can change laws. We have that ability. And so the Center for Arizona Policy, that's what they do. They work through the political process here in Phoenix. Alliance Defending Freedom. They're an organization here in town that if you ever get in trouble and your rights are being violated as a Christian, they will defend you in the court system. Places like the Family Research Council. It's a national organization that promotes faith, family, and religious freedom. You see, there is a war that's going on. There is a battle against God and against his values. And as followers of Christ, we need to understand that that's happening, and we need to be able to fight in the physical means. We have that freedom in this country. But beyond that, followers of God also need to fight spiritually. I'm going to go back. I'm going to read Joshua 6, starting with verse 8, and just listen. God commanded the people, here's how you're going to fight this battle. Now, here's what the people did, starting in verse 8. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord, they went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding. But Joshua had commanded the people, do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout. So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once, and the people returned to the camp and spent the night there. After doing that for those 6 days, and then the 7th day, on verse 20, when the trumpets sounded, the people shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed, so every man charged straight in, and they took the city. It's what I told you earlier, but it's just, when God commanded, hey, this is what you need to do, it didn't make sense to the people. This is not the way you wage a war. And yet the people were obedient and they did it. And when they did it, the walls collapsed and they were able to go and take the city. I mean, they had to walk around the city and they had to be silent. Now, if you are someone, an Israelite, and you get all geared up for battle, and they say, okay, just walk around the city, but be quiet. I think at first you probably think, okay, that's not too big a deal. But I think the people of the city of Jericho, after they see it the first day or two, they're probably going, that's kind of weird. What are you guys doing? But after day 4, 5, or 6, do you think they started kind of pointing at the Israelites and taunting them and calling them names? Hey, what are you doing? Just walking in circles? And the Israelite people during that time didn't say a word. It wasn't until that last day, after that last time, that they gave the shout, and boom, then they went in. I'll tell you what, God's way of fighting can look pretty strange at times. God's way of fighting, what it does, it ensures that he gets the glory for the victory and not us. We're a part of a spiritual warfare that's happening in this country today. A lot of times I don't think we're armed for battle. I don't think we have any concept of how to fight spiritually. There's some scriptures that will help us. Number 1, reading the Bible, reading God's word is a part of spiritual warfare. And if you want to learn more about people that were in situations like that, read the stories about people like Nehemiah and Daniel and Joseph. They were in societies that were very evil, and yet they were able to be followers of God in those places. So read the Bible, read what it says about those things. Number 2 is that you pray. Pray that God will tear down the walls in your life. You probably don't have to fight against the city of Jericho. You probably don't have those type of physical walls. But imagine there are some walls that are up that are keeping you from your walk with God and what God wants to do. And so pray that God will tear down those walls. And number 3, remember this. Our goal is to win the hearts and the minds of people. Jim Dennison from the Forum on Truth and Culture, he wrote this: "The culture wars of our day are not about winning and losing elections or court cases. They're about winning and losing souls. Long after the Supreme Court has ceased to meet and the last gay pride march has ended, every person that you know will be either with God or separated from God. What we have to say on the moral issues of our day is important, but so is the way that we say it. These matters matter enormously, but people matter even more. We need to remember that what we're fighting for is the hearts and souls and minds of people. And fighting God's way for people, it gets to be pretty hard. Because the strategy that Jesus gives us for winning people's hearts and minds flies against everything that we are. Here's Jesus' strategy for winning the hearts and minds of people today. In Luke chapter 6, Jesus says, "I tell you this, love your enemies." Well, Jesus, maybe you didn't catch the definition of enemies. Enemies are those people that are against me. And you're saying that you're supposed to be saying love your family, love your friends, love those people that you kind of come in contact with. Jesus knew exactly what he's saying. He said, those people, your enemies, that's who you need to love. Well, how do I do that? Well, he says, do good to those who hate you. Again, Jesus, got an issue. They hate me. Have you seen the mean and rotten things that they've done to me at work? Do you see that the way they treat me? Yeah, I see that. Why don't you go ahead and do good in response? Because when they do something hateful to you, when you respond hatefully, guess what? It just makes a huge cycle. Not a lot of souls and hearts are won through that. Bless those who curse you. Well, Jesus, the last thing I want to do when someone flips me off on the interstate is say, well, God bless you. That's not at all what I want to do. Pray for those who mistreat you. You know, when someone is driving down the road and they cut you off, you know, our first response is, you're terrible drivers, what's wrong with you? You honk the horn and beat that thing. Pray for those who mistreat you. Because we like to do a lot of yelling at those people that cut us off, but how many times have we cut someone else off and said, well, you know, it was just an accident. I know I should have done that. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. You know, during Jesus' time and in his culture, smacking someone on the cheek was an insult, is what it was. And so Jesus says, hey, when someone insults you like that, turn them the other cheek also. Don't give a snarky comment back. Take it and say, well, you know what? Is that the best you have to say about me? Come on, tell me some more stuff. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop him from taking your tunic. If someone takes your light jacket, don't keep him from taking your heavy one as well. Give to everyone who asks you. If anyone takes what belongs to you, don't demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. You don't understand, Brian. If I start doing these types of things when people treat me wrong, I mean, they're just going to step all over me. If I start doing good to people that are doing this, I mean, what kind of a mess would that make? God's ways of fighting in our culture don't make sense. God's ways of fighting they're against everything that wells up in us. And God says, if we want to win the hearts and minds of the people in this world, yeah, we're friendly to people that we know, we're friendly to our family. But the people that are the most mean to us, those are the people that we need to do good things for. Because us responding in kind is not going to win anyone. See, our battle is with Satan. It's with evil. And to overcome evil, you have to use good. And followers of God will fight. Yeah, I mean, that happens. And when we see evil in this world, there are times in this country where we can fight through the court system or through the law or things like that. But ultimately, what it really comes down to is we have to make the choice to fight spiritually. You know, I was getting my hair cut just a couple days ago. And as I'm getting my hair cut, the lady finds out that I'm a pastor. And she says, well, let's see what you think about this. Now, whenever someone says, hey, let's just see what you think about, when they've got a pair of scissors near your head, You want to do a good job answering. And so she brings up this idea, and she says, so what do you think about this Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner thing? She says, I talk to people about this all the time, and I think people, his family should support him and stuff like that. And she talks for a couple of minutes and said, so what do you think about this? I'm like, can we put the scissors down? I said, well, honestly, I said this, I appreciate his family supporting him. Because we all make decisions that not everyone agrees with, and we all make decisions that have been wrong. And so I think we need to support our family even when they make decisions that we disagree with. And I think that's a good thing. I said, but did you know this? Did you know that Johns Hopkins University was kind of the pioneer of this transgender surgery stuff back in the 70s? Do you know they stopped doing it? She's like, well, no, didn't know that. I said, well, they stopped it because what they found is that 70 to 80% of the people who said, I want to have this surgery, when they just let them go and just kind of pushed them off for a few weeks or a few months, they made the decision they didn't want the surgery on their own. So 70, 80% of the people who said, I want this, later on they said, nah, never mind, I'm good. I said, but even more than that, what they found is for the people that go ahead and have the surgery, they are 20 times more likely to kill themselves. She hadn't heard that. No one was blasting that in interviews with Bruce Caitlyn Jenner. I said, I think God made people. I think he made men, and he made men to be men, and he made women to be women. So, here's the deal. We're called to speak the truth, and we're supposed to speak it in love, in ways that win the hearts and souls of people. And I'll tell you what, you need to be prepared. I did not go into that haircut having prepared a 3-point sermon on Bruce Jenner. But we need to be prepared with what we know. And we need to be prepared to present it in a way that people go, you know what, that makes sense. There's a cultural war that's being fought in this country today. And if you're a follower of Christ, I think that you need to be involved in that. God says we need to do that. And what that means is you need to know what the Bible says. You need to be able to stand up and support the things that the Bible says and do it in ways that are winful and not hateful. If you are not a follower of Christ today, there's probably another war that's going on. There's a war inside of you where you try and figure out, man, do I want to keep living my life like I want to and under my rules? Or am I going to submit myself to God and follow his rules? And honestly, that's a huge war. That's a huge battle that you have to fight. The consequences are, if you turn your life over to God, you'll be with him forever. If you don't, he says, you want to be separate from me? Okay, you could be separate from me forever. That's the choices you make and the consequences of those choices. And so at some point you have to make that decision. So I just ask that everybody would stand up this morning. And if you want to know more about what it means to become a follower of Christ and to do things the way he wants, there's some people that will talk with you this morning, share with you from the Bible about how to make that happen. Why don't you just come meet me up front as we sing this song.